Hey, Cheryl, thank you for joining me this morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I'm super excited to really get your story out there. So I met Cheryl. I guess I haven't actually met Cheryl. We've only talked over the phone and now virtually. But Liz Winings, who's normally on the podcast with me, introduced us. She actually called me immediately. I think it was on her way home from an event that you hosted. I don't know exactly what the event was, but she was just like she knew your story before that, but I think it was just fresh on her mind. And she was like, you have to talk to Cheryl. She's like, what she's doing is so in line with what you're doing. And you guys just like have the same mission and passion. And so she wanted to connect us, and you were gracious enough to take my phone call. So I appreciate that.
Of course.
So I really just want to get your story and your message out there because I think it's so cool what you're doing, and not just what you're doing, but I feel like innovative way you've gone about it with what you've told me about, like the dragonfly leaders and those things. So I guess if you want to just start with your experience that got you here, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So have 4 kids, and our oldest son, Alex, was struggling with some depression and anxiety, diagnosed in high school. He was under our roof. We got him help, graduated from high school, went off to college, had 2.5 great years of college, but then called us in the spring of his junior year of college and said, I'm in trouble. I think you better come get me. So he was at the University of Georgia. We drove up there and got him, and he clearly had been struggling for a while. I mean, he was very thin, he was disheveled, he was not in a good place, looked like he hadn't been sleeping for a long time. And so we withdrew him from school and brought him home and spent the next year or so just trying to catch up to it. Just struggled with finding the right providers for him, the right resources for him. He was having a really hard time, even though he wanted help. And eventually, so he went back to school and then came back home again. Eventually he came home, and we tried desperately for a year between 2016 and 2017 to just help find him the right resource, the right therapy, the right diagnosis to help him get on his feet. And it was ebbs and flows and super frustrating. I mean, during that time period, my husband and I weren't given a lot of information about what he was going through. The ecosystem sort of reverted to this notion that he was an adult, because he was at that point technically by age, and he needed to muscle through it on his own. We were really frightened during that time period that he would use drugs. I mean, the statistics are, right, 50% of people with a untreated mental health issue will have a co-occurring substance use disorder. And so we were worried about that. He regularly submitted to drug testing and passed them all. We went out of town in August of 2017, hadn't heard from him for 2 days, and I asked my sister-in-law to go over and check on him, and she found him and he had passed away. We weren't sure if it was suicide or accidental overdose. I think for a long time I needed to know. I think at the end of the day, I kind of reconciled, didn't really matter. Either he made a decision to end his pain on his own, whether I agree with that decision or not, or he was so desperate that he took something thinking he was going to numb the pain, and it ended up taking his life. It ended up being he had bought Xanax from someone he knew, and it had fentanyl in it, and he died. It took a while to get to where we are today. I mean, there are so many parts of Alex's story, so many places we could have gone. We knew we wanted to do something. We didn't really know what that looked like. And the path to get there was complicated, particularly for me.
Just in the sense that you were wanting to do something, but also grieving the loss of your child.
And nobody knew how he had died. And we hadn't talked about it when he was going through what he was going through. He begged us not to tell people what was happening. You know that, and we talk about it now at the foundation. Stigmatization isn't just about community or family stigmatization of the person going through the journey. There is a massive element that is self-stigmatization and the self-deprecating commentary that he would make about himself. It is probably the one thing, when I think back to the things he said about himself, can still just wreck me as a mom, listening to him talk about himself in a way that we never saw him. Yeah, we knew he had issues battling his mental health issue, but we never translated that into a definition of who he was. But he did. And a lot of people do that. And so we kind of kept that secret for him. Nobody asked. Alex had a diagnosis of epilepsy, and I think it wasn't active, but people knew. I think they assumed that that's what it was, and we didn't feel the need to correct anybody because it wasn't our story to tell.
Yeah.
During that time period, it's important to note that we started using this dragonfly to remember him by, where there's a photo. If you go to our website, it's Hearts4Minds.org. There's a photo of him when he was 5, when a dragonfly landed on his nose. And
it's so cute. So cute.
It encapsulated exactly who he was, right? You lose somebody and you want to remember everything about them. And he was just this super sweet guy, loved nature, just sort of quiet until you got to know him. But this big bug landed on his face and he was like, this is the best thing ever. And so that was sort of the start. We all loved that picture. Everybody who loved him knew that that was him. And it started with, I got a tattoo of a dragonfly. It actually has Alex's initials in the body.
That's
and
cool.
That was the first sort of material dragonfly thing we did. And as we talked as a family over that year to figure out what we wanted to do, we talked about a lot of different things that had nothing to do with mental health. Alex was a big STEM kid and a big nature kid. And could we do something like a scholarship in his honor?
Yeah.
But eventually, in 2008, he died in 2017. In 2018, there started to be a lot of talk publicly in the news. There were the Parkland shootings here in Florida and the shootings out in Las Vegas. I wasn't touching the gun control issue, but what the swirl in the media was that these gentlemen were mentally ill and that we should be afraid of people who have mental illness. And I got terrified. I got terrified for all the Alexes in the world, or that if someone knew that he had passed away from a mental illness, that they would think he was a criminal or dangerous, and he wasn't. And we're not discounting that people who commit heinous crimes or callously take lives do not suffer from something, but that shouldn't translate into an entire disparagement of anybody going through a mental health crisis. And I got scared that people who need help weren't ever going to reach out to get help because they were going to be so afraid that someone at work would be afraid of them, or they'd lose their job, or they'd lose all their friends, or whatever. And so we started to say, okay, maybe this is our space. Maybe we have to tell our story. Maybe we have to break it down and say, you know what, mental illness can happen to anyone. And it doesn't automatically mean that you're dangerous or scary or you're going to hurt somebody. But it does mean that the system is broken and you need to get help wherever you fit on that spectrum. But I struggled with that because, one, it meant talking about Alex and talking about our story on a regular basis, which wasn't always easy.
And was it something you ever did when he was alive? You guys didn't talk about it. Yeah.
When he was there, we didn't. And afterwards, I felt like it wasn't my story to tell, that somehow I needed permission. Mm-hmm. So on the one, and I had been journaling for the year. It was one of the things I did to cope with my grief. Was I actually had, maybe it'll help someone out there listening, I had 2 diaries. One was this very pretty embossed diary with really positive Bible phrases on the bottom of each page. It was very helpful for me. I did have therapy after we lost Alex because I spent 8 weeks never leaving the house. But for me, I had to resolve my issues with God. Whatever your God is, I was angry, thought I was being punished. So I also had this black journal. It literally is a black cover journal. And I put all my dark thoughts in there. But through all the journaling, kind of wrote out our story and our journey. And on the 1-year anniversary of losing Alex, I went to the graveside and was reading him the journal, just trying to talk to him, trying to figure out how to explain, maybe in his mind, he was judging himself for all these things, but I wanted him to hear that it wasn't happening for us, right? And that translates into what we do today. So many people need to hear that maybe, but the voice in your head is telling you, but it isn't true. It's lying to you. And so I was sitting there and a dragonfly landed on his flowers. And I tell people, listen,
goosebumps.
Right? I have the time date stamp of that dragonfly on his flowers. It is probably one of the most beautiful dragonflies I've ever seen. I choose to believe that it was him giving me permission to use his story to help other people. And that's how it started. I went home that day. I wrote out his story a little bit, our story, I say, because a lot of it had to do with me understanding the skills or the tools that I didn't have to help him. And I put it on social media, and someone started to GoFundMe, and all of a sudden we had this money. And I was like, okay, but I don't personally need this money. What am I going to do with this money? And that's how it started. We started a 501c3. We transferred the money into the 501c3, and here we are in year number 6. And our, mission, our vision, what we do is morphed a little bit. That's challenging, but we just kind of operate on the fundamental principle that no one should lose a loved one simply because they don't have information, tools, or access. Full stop.
That's so wow. I didn't know that second half of the story from when we talked last time. That's so cool. With the dragonfly, I remember so a dragonfly now represents a coordinator in the hospital, correct?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. We use it. I always have my lapel pin on. If people want to think about ways that they can help, go to the website, get a pin, or contact me if you're local. I will get you one. Dragonflies are incredible symbols of courage, strength, and change. And we thought, gosh, we're using it already in the foundation. We're using it to remember Alex. Why not tell someone, be a dragonfly? They start in the water, they grow, they fly in the air. They're incredible, like predators in the air. They're great. They eat bad bugs. Like, it's the notion that no matter where you are at one moment in time, it doesn't mean you have to stay there. You have the ability to change and reach other heights. So it became this great way. We are as emotional as we were about Alex, and still are. Believe me, I'm totally put together this morning, and there are days when I'm stopped in my tracks. So I don't want anyone to think that the journey is easy. We wanted to do some tangible things. And the first one was to go to Baptist and say to them, I want to tell you our story, because you don't know us, even though we were a Baptist family, and you don't know Alex, and you'll never get to know him, but I want you to know where there were gaps in care. Not blaming anything, not angry. I went through my angry phase early. I wasn't solving things when I was angry.
I waited to show up here until I got that out.
Exactly. That was done. Got through that. Now we're here. Now we're going to do solutions. But I kind of said, here's the problem and here's what we think the solution is, and you have a model for it. So when my mom had breast cancer, we were assigned a nurse navigator. This nurse who was dedicated to our family, she had other families too, but they gave us a notebook, and it was all about my mom's diagnosis, her medical team, surgeries, what the process was, her treatment. I mean, it had everything in it. And we were told, don't ever let her go to appointments on her own. Don't ever let her, she's going to always need support. She's in a crisis. And I thought, oh my God, nobody ever said that to us. What we were told is leave him alone, let him do it on his own. And we were like, but sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. How do I know, like, when we need extra medical care, or how do I remind him about whatever his self-care options are? Like, he's in a crisis. He's not making good decisions. And so we said to them, that's the model. That's the solution. You already have it. There's always support for pediatrics, right? Because parents have the right to have all that information. And when our kids are minors, we take care of them. We drive them places. There's something magical or not magical that happens when kids turn 18, particularly in the medical system, and they become adults. And if they don't want to grant you releases for information or avail themselves of your support, you're frozen out. In our case, Alex signed all the HIPAA waivers, but the provider network was still not willing to wrap us into his care.
But they're still willing to take the insurance that he's on, which is yours. Shocking.
Yeah, that's not a problem because I can keep him on until he's 26. But
he's an adult. He's an adult that does not need you.
That's right. Which we would never say to anyone. We didn't say it to my mom. And she was most definitely an adult when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. My husband's had knee surgeries. When the surgeon comes out afterwards, he gives me a whole pamphlet.
Rundown. Yeah.
look for signs of infection, look for this, call us immediately. Like they didn't say, you know what, we gave it to him. I know he's a little groggy after anesthesia, but he'll figure it out. He's an adult. We don't do that. And so that kind of became that has to stop. And so we created the foundation for what's called a Dragonfly Care Coordinator. We started an endowment at Baptist in January of 2019 and spent about a year and a half with incredible community support and raised $1.5 million in that endowment. And it endows that Dragonfly Care Coordinator for life. And that care coordinator is dedicated to a patient and their family. And it helps them navigate that journey because, and Elizabeth can tell you, Dr. Winings, I mean, it's an up and down journey, and it's a lifetime journey. And it's not, here's a pill for 14 days, an antibiotic, and you don't have strep throat anymore. It's not that. And it can change as you get older, or your hormones change, or lots of different things. And it can be complicated, and it can feel lonely. And so that care coordinator is designed to be that navigator and to help arm families with information. And the attrition rate, now we're in 2024 and fall of 2024. So it's been up and running for a little more than 3 years. The attrition rate has reduced by about 70%. So our hypothesis worked, and that's amazing.
That's absolutely amazing. And that's exactly what I was thinking when you said it can be lonely. And it's like, I think of even just being a parent, right? Like the first time you're navigating it, you're like, I don't know what to do with this and that. Then once you've gone through it, you're like, okay, there are like logical things and orders and steps I could have taken. And then they do that with normal, when I say normal, I would say physical medical care, anything physical. And it doesn't matter how old you are. They're like, somebody needs to take you home. Somebody needs to be your caregiver. Somebody needs to do this. And then I feel like it's almost like the hospital, not almost, but the hospital feeds into that stigma of like, you're alone in this. This isn't that important. You don't need help from the outside, because they're not giving you any of the tools that they're giving everybody else who has a physical ailment, And it's so that I love the way that you guys have like materialized something to just help people. Like that's so cool. I hate that you had to experience what you did to figure out where the holes were. But I truly think that is such an amazing way to use his story and his legacy to, pay it forward and help somebody else so that they don't experience a loss like you had. So that's just, I love that so much. So, and I know you guys are in Baptist. How many hospitals are you? You're in multiple hospitals though, right?
No, I mean, we do the care coordinators only in Baptist. We try, and it's a process. We're still talking to other hospitals about doing it. I mean, it's an expense. It was frustrating for me in the beginning because everybody was like, yes, this is the absolute right thing to do. So it's like, okay, so do it. And it's like, there's no money for that.
Yeah.
So, we've learned a little patience with that, but we have partnerships with Mayo. We do a lot of stuff with them. They're very supportive. We do some things with UF. A lot of hospitals like Ascendant, they shut down some of their behavioral health. So, it's a big need. So the care coordinator is a harder one. We work on that. If anybody out there is listening and they think that their system wants care coordination or needs some help setting it up, they should call us. There are smaller organizations that do it in the mental health space. MHRC, which is the Mental Health Resource Center here in Jacksonville, has a whole care coordination group. Here Tomorrow, which is a peer specialist, has a care coordinator. So people know it works. It's just a matter of figuring out how to fund it.
Yes. And Hearts4Minds has a ton of resources on their website, a ton of resources. There's even somewhere, it's live now where you can do the zip code, right? Mm-hmm. You put your zip code in and it'll tell you what's around you. Like it is so well researched, prepared, built out. It's super, super helpful. So we'll make sure that everybody has that link. And it's just hearts4minds.org. Correct?
Yes, you can get to if you go to hearts4minds.org, and click the Find Help, it'll take you to the Connection platform. You can get to the Connection platform directly. It's h4mconnect.org. But you can get to it from the website also. And the website has other information for people and links to other places where you can read about mental illness. We've got an information sheet there that explains what all the initials are after people's names. There's a lot of different options for therapy, right? Dr. Winings is a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I mean, she can manage meds and provide therapy. I mean, it's such a great option. There's certified peer specialists. Those are people with lived experience. For some people, kind of like the AA model. For some people, that connection is important, that people can talk to someone who's been through what they've been through. There's family therapy. There's life coach. There traditional psychiatrists who people think are your therapist, but they're not, right? I mean, there's licensed social workers. I mean, it's complicated. It's not like I have cancer, I need to go to an oncologist. And there may be other participants in your care, but it's not like, are there 18 different kinds? Maybe specialties, but you know where to go. And so we tried to make it a little bit easier. And so, the platform was released in the spring. We have some modifications to make. And we're constantly updating it. Right now, it's a 100-mile radius around the city of Jacksonville, but probably by the end of the year, it'll be the entire state of Florida. And we are gathering all the information to try and make it nationwide. So
awesome. One more thing I wanted to ask you about, or I want you to tell everyone about, is your murals, which is just so brilliant to me. So the murals that you guys are doing at schools, if you can kind of share that with everybody of how you're getting the word out.
Yeah, so it's interesting in the beginning when we started to talk unapologetically about Alex and what had happened to him and the fact that we lost him. I almost abandoned ship on everything because we would have conversations with people and it made them so uncomfortable that I was like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. Almost like making a social faux pas, right? Yeah. And I'd go home and I'd be like, but that's the problem, right? Like we'll talk about our boobs and our prostate and we'll talk about whatever, we'll say anything, but that makes us uncomfortable that someone was struggling. So it took, the first year was a little rough. I think my husband was worried. I was so drained every time I spoke publicly because I was so concerned about what everybody else thought. And then I started to do some research and I thought, okay, what's the scientific best way to change somebody's mind? And what's the scientific sort of faux pas when you're trying to challenge somebody's belief system? And so listen, unapologetic conversations have to happen. And sometimes people scoff at it and sometimes people don't. But right now, I've gotten to the point where my demeanor is whatever. Like, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm not embarrassed about it. Alex was a warrior. He did the best that he could, and we did the best that we could. But you know what? We have a lot more information now, and we're going to make it easier for someone else. But changing belief systems takes a long time. I mean, our natural tendency, if you challenge someone's belief system, is to dig in. And so we tried to figure out what are some of the ways that long-standing social change has worked. One is visual imagery. The easiest example is the pink ribbon. I mean, that started as her standing outside of stores and going to government people and using that pink ribbon to say, early mammograms, early diagnostics are the way to save people's lives. And by the way, we have these machines called mammograms and we can easily do them. And she changed the whole trajectory of how, we care for people with breast cancer and increase their likelihood of a positive treatment outcome. So visual imagery was key. We use our dragonfly as everything. If you go, it's got a little heart on the head. It is the mental health color. But for me, I think not everybody instantly knows what every color ribbon is, except for the pink one. So we're hoping we can get some buy-in, more than what we have locally, for people to understand that this is a great symbol for mental health awareness. And it kind of sparked from there. The other thing is you can't just go and talk to someone one time and think we're going to change their mind. You have to leave reminders. And so it sort of evolved. Alex was also pretty artistic. And so it sort of evolved into what are the most long-standing pieces of art out there? And that's murals. They last an average of 5 to 10 years. We leverage our dragonfly. I mean, every mural is distinctly different, but they all have dragonflies on them. And then they all have QR codes. And the QR code links people back to our website where they can get information and connections to providers. We have 20. They're not just in schools. They're out in the community.
Okay. All in Jacksonville right now, right?
They're all over Jacksonville. Most of them are in Duval County, but now we have one in Baker and we have one in Nassau. We're working on another one up in Fernandina Beach and another big one by the fairgrounds in Jacksonville. And we're looking at some in Marion County and Putnam County. So we want to expand in each of the counties and make sure that we're connecting people. So it's if an owner has a building where it's public and there's foot traffic, we have grants and we come in and we commission an artist. Yeah, we commission an artist. They come up with a rendering, and up it goes. And then we try and have a little unveil event to celebrate it, so people know. Like the more we celebrate them, the more people understand what they are. But yeah, we have more than 20, so it's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. I didn't realize there were that many of them. I think that's so cool. That's so cool, because I would look at that and be like, "What is that?" And then I would scan the QR code to figure it out. So.
And now so the original QR codes were just a QR code with our logo on it. Now the QR codes, we now make them so that they have a little blurb on the top that says, everybody needs help sometime. If you or someone you know is going through something, first we give them the crisis text line that someone can access at 24/7, which is text 741, that life to 741-741. But then they have the QR codes. Now it's a little more explanation than just throwing it up there.
Yeah, that's so cool though. I love that. So very creative.
But, it's like the simplest thing, right? I mean, people are like,
but then it's like, how many simple things do other people not think of? Like somebody thought of a toothbrush, right? Like it's very simple. It's also like not everybody thought of it.
But it makes so much sense.
Exactly. It's like, oh, what a good idea. So, what you guys have done is it is so impressive to me. I truly think it's amazing. And I know you and your husband have actual like full-time careers and things. And the fact that you've put this much time and energy and finances and just like raised this kind of money and created this, honestly, an entire system that's growing is the coolest thing. And I know I love, my story with my brother that died by suicide, and we didn't have any indicators that he had a mental illness or that he was depressed. We didn't know those things to even get him help. But I know a lot of his friends do struggle with that and have admitted it since. So like just knowing that there's resources for them, and, they are in Jacksonville. So that's also very personal to me, where I'm like, wow, like, have you heard of this? Like, they're here for you to help you find somebody so that you don't end up like William, So it's very cool. And I'm super grateful. You guys should be so proud of everything you've grown to this point. And I am glad to hear about it now and hope to watch it continue to grow in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I'm going to go downtown Orlando and see your mural on the side of a building. So
that'd be awesome. We would love that. Well, I mean, it's a journey, right? I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I told you in the beginning, it kind of sucked the life out of me and my husband worried. I mean, reliving losing Alex every time I spoke to someone was tough. But at some point, and I distinctly remember the moment with my husband, at some point we were walking our dog around our neighborhood, kind of chatting about it, trying to figure out, can we make this sustainable? Like, is this a real thing? Are we kidding ourselves? There are so many players in the system I'm not a mental health provider. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And we were talking about something and I said, I don't know what's happened, but at some point, Alex transferred from being this weight of grief that I carried around with me 24/7 to this pillar of strength. And I have a whole nother job. I hope my bosses aren't listening. I would much rather be doing this. But yeah, this has become it's my passion. But it is my energy. It is clearly what energizes me. And that's because we didn't have it. And it's simple. And there are a lot of incredible provider organizations in our community and other communities, but people don't necessarily know where to go because they're not being given that information. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. And we just want to fill that gap and make sure that that's not true. We would never be okay with someone dying from cancer because they couldn't get an appointment with an oncologist. And we should not be okay with someone losing their life to a mental health disorder because they couldn't get care. It's unacceptable. It's an unacceptable statistic. And because of the number of loss of lives to overdose or suicide is up there in the top 3, it should get just as much compassion and attention.
Absolutely. I love it. This whole series is titled like Turn Your Pain into Purpose. And it's literally what you've done. And kind of what you were just saying is I was hearing like this was just like this heavy source of grief. And now it's like life giving for you. Like I feel like that's how you know something's meant to be. And it might take, a month to grow or 5 years to grow or 10 years to grow it. But at the same, like, if you never start it, you can't help anyone. And you've helped probably countless people. I don't even know. I know, like the attrition rates and stuff. I don't know if like per person, how many people have been affected by it. It's probably immeasurable at this point. So that's amazing. I mean, I feel like that's all you can ask for, because instead of sitting in that grief and just being like, we lost him, this sucks, these are all the things that could be better, like you turn around and you were like, well, let's make it better for the next person. So
yeah, well, that took a while. I mean, for anyone who's, kind of going through
yep.
a loss and they're struggling, that takes a while. I mean, I didn't literally leave the house for 8 weeks. I made myself one promise, and that was I would shower every day. That was about all I could do. I didn't sleep much, wasn't eating much. And it was interesting because my husband was like, you need to go get help. And I'm like, why? Why would I need therapy? Why would I need help? So I'm going to go talk to someone, and what? I'm going to tell them I'm sad. What are they going to do about that? Who's going to take my sad away, right? I mean, listen, I just lost a child, to knowing exactly what it was, and I was so resistant. But then I did, and that took a little while too. I mean, that's a process, and you go through all the things you want to go through. In the beginning, I was just mad because I decided that it had happened to me. Like I was being it. It didn't have anything to do with Alex or the ecosystem, or I felt like I was being punished, and it took a long time to get out of my own way. And I did. It probably took 6 months before I finally was like, oh, wait a minute, like I have a husband and other children and a whole life out there. And what am I doing if I just give up? I'm like compounding the tragedy. Not sure I expected I'd be where I am today. And that also comes sometimes with a cost. And I'm super honest with people. And sometimes I'm rational about it, and sometimes I'm mad and sad about it still. I'd like to be what I do today and still have Alex here. Like, we miss him terribly. I saw somebody say something the other day, and it made so much sense to me. They said something about, I have a U-shaped hole in my heart, and not a letter U, a Y-O-U. And I think about that with Alex, right? I mean, that just hits you to the core. That never goes away. But every time we connect with someone, every time we have a conversation, every time we hear from someone, or at least we know that we probably changed somebody's ending of their story, we can crowd out that U-shaped hole. It's there. I just wish I could have been this person and still have him here. But I know that that's just not what my path is. And for me, it was sort of reconciling my faith with my path and understanding that this is maybe what I was supposed to do. And okay, so sometimes you have to go through hard things to figure out what your path is in life. And so that's not easy, though, for anyone going out there. I don't care who you talk to who has turned tragedy or something hard in their life into purpose. It still has a cost, and it is still hard. And if anyone stands up and tells you it makes it all better, I would challenge the honesty of that. It's terrible. And he was a child, my child. That was one of the biggest motivators. That can't be all that he left in this world. So now it's my job to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it. And hopefully some more people can check you guys out, whether you help them or if they can be a resource for you guys to help you expand and grow and help reach other people. So
so many ways
you do.
Yeah, follow us on social media. We have a lot of fun merchandise. We work in a lot of positive affirmations. We don't want mental health to constantly be this negative conversation, but there are positive affirmations you can do. If you're a business here or somewhere else who wants a mural, give us a call. We're always looking for volunteers, or you can sign up for suicide prevention training. Lots of ways to message us and get in touch. And if you are having trouble finding a resource and you're not sure you're connecting right with the provider network, you can message us, and we usually work to try and connect you directly.
Awesome. And I will have, so if you guys are watching this on YouTube, if you go below in the description, Her website will be there, so you guys can reach everything from there, and their social media is linked from there. If you're on our social media, you can also link to that. If you're on Spotify, again, go in the description, and it'll have everything linked so you can reach them directly. So
yeah, and share House of
yes,
Hollow, share Hearts4Minds, get the message up.
absolutely. All right, Cheryl, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, Jen.
You too.